My name is Sienna Carter. I'm 30 years old. Before everything in my life split open, I used to think betrayal would sound louder. I thought it would come with screaming so violent the neighbors would hear every word through the walls. I thought it would come with shattered glass, slammed doors, something ugly and obvious enough that years later you could still point to that exact second and say, there. That was the moment my family died. I didn't know betrayal could arrive in silence. I didn't know it could stand in a hallway with folded arms and lowered eyes and wear the face of your own older sister. And I definitely didn't know that 12 years later, a single letter would be enough to bring my father to his knees in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. But it did. 2 weeks ago, I mailed a certified letter addressed to my father. Urgent. Read immediately. I timed it so it would arrive the day before Thanksgiving because I knew my family would all be there. I knew he would open it with everyone close enough to hear his breathing. My mother, my older sister, her husband, their children, my aunt and uncle, all of them gathered around the same table where, once upon a time, I still believed I belonged. By the third paragraph, my father was on his knees sobbing. By the last line, he couldn't breathe. And my sister, the woman who had destroyed my life at 18 with one lie and 12 years of cowardice, left the room and never came back. That's what I heard, anyway. Because I wasn't there. I haven't been in that house in 12 years. I'm 30 now, successful, wealthy, stable in the way people assume must have come from luck or support or some benevolent hand reaching down at the right moment. It didn't. Everything I have was built from the ashes of what my family did to me. Every dollar, every square foot, every ounce of peace. But before I tell you what that letter said, before I tell you the truth that finally tore their world apart, you need to understand what happened the day my father threw me out. You need to understand the lie. I was 18 years old, 3 months from high school graduation, straight A student, full scholarship to MIT, engineering program, full ride, tuition, housing, books, all of it covered. I had spent 4 years building that future brick by brick, assignment by assignment, sleepless night by sleepless night. While other kids were going to football games and wasting weekends, I was polishing essays, chasing leadership roles, doing volunteer hours, making myself impossible to overlook. MIT was not just a college to me. It was escape. It was proof. It was the first door that had ever opened in a house where approval was always conditional. My father, Richard Carter, owned a construction company. Small but respected. He believed in hard work, reputation, and control. He liked things that made him look successful, a strong business, a tidy lawn, a daughter he could brag about. For most of my childhood, I was that daughter. My sister Rebecca was 22 then, 4 years older than me, and already drifting in a way that made my father clench his jaw whenever her name came up. She had dropped out of college after one semester, moved back home, picked up part-time jobs she never kept for long, drank too much, and dated men my parents disapproved of on sight. By the time I was 18, she had become the disappointment people politely stepped around, and I had become the opposite. That matters, because what happened next only makes sense if you understand how badly Rebecca needed me to fall. It was March 2013. A Tuesday, I think, maybe Wednesday. Funny what the brain preserves and what it lets rot. I remember the sky was the color of dirty cotton when I came home from school. I remember my backpack felt heavier than usual, full of calculus homework and scholarship paperwork and a future that still belonged to me for maybe 5 more minutes. When I opened the front door, my father was already waiting in the living room. He wasn't sitting the way he usually did after work, half watching the news, half scrolling through invoices. He was standing, face red, hands trembling. The air in the room felt wrong immediately. Tight and metallic, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Sit down," he said. His voice was low, controlled, somehow worse than shouting. I stopped with one hand still on the strap of my backpack. What happened? "Sit down." So I did. My mother was in the corner by the window, crying quietly into a tissue. That should have warned me. Rebecca was standing in the hallway, one shoulder against the wall, arms crossed, expression blank in that practiced way people wear when they want to look innocent. I remember looking from one face to the next and feeling this strange ripple of confusion, like I had walked into a play halfway through and somehow everyone else knew the script except me. My father threw a stack of papers onto the coffee table. "Do you want to explain this?" I looked down. Bank statements. At first I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I saw the highlighted lines. Withdrawals: $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000. Over and over across 6 months, methodical and ugly. By the time my eyes reached the bottom page, the total sat there like a sentence. $47,000. I don't understand, I said. Don't lie to me. My heart started beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I'm not lying. I really don't know what this is. The bank investigated. His voice sharpened. The transfers were made from our home internet, from your laptop, using your login credentials. The money was moved out of my business account, routed through PayPal, then into a cryptocurrency wallet. $47,000, stolen from my company. I stared at him, then at the papers, then at him again. For a second, the words simply didn't land. They floated around the room without attaching to reality. Me. Theft? My father's business account? It was so absurd my brain rejected it on instinct. Dad, I said carefully, I've never even logged into your business account. I don't know the password. The bank traced it. Then they traced it wrong. His hand slammed onto the coffee table so hard the papers jumped. My mother flinched. You expect me to believe that? Yes, because it's true. No, Sienna. The truth is that you stole from me. The truth is that you siphoned money out of my company for 6 months while I worked to keep this family afloat. The truth is that you almost ruined us. I felt the room tilt. I didn't take anything. Then where did it go? I don't know. Drugs? He snapped. Gambling? Some boy? What did you need $47,000 for? The insult in that question hit almost as hard as the accusation itself. Like I wasn't even worth asking honestly, like there had to be some disgusting secret version of me he could suddenly believe in. I didn't steal from you, I said, and I could hear the panic creeping into my voice now. Please, just let me look at the evidence. Let me show you whatever this is, because it wasn't me. He stood up so fast the recliner behind him scraped across the floor. You have 1 hour to pack your things and get out of my house. I blinked at him. What? 1 hour. Take what you can carry. I actually laughed once, a broken, disbelieving sound. Dad, stop. This isn't funny. His expression didn't move. Leave your phone. Leave your keys. Leave anything I paid for. After 1 hour, if you are still in this house, I will call the police and have you arrested. Something cold slid through me then. Not fear exactly. Not yet. Something worse. Recognition. This was real. Dad, please listen to me. I stood up too fast and almost tripped over my backpack. I did not do this. You know me. You know I wouldn't. Out. My mother started crying harder, but she still said nothing. That silence from her hurt in a different way. My father's rage was a weapon I could see. My mother's silence felt like watching a bridge collapse while the person standing on it just lowered their head and let you fall. I turned toward Rebecca. She still hadn't said a word. And then, in one flashing, terrible instant, something clicked into place. My laptop. My passwords. The way she used to hover in my room pretending to borrow chargers, pretending to look for hair ties, pretending not to watch me type. The resentment in her eyes every time my father praised me. The sick, oily calm on her face right now. It was Rebecca. She had done this. Dad, I said, and now my voice was shaking for an entirely different reason. It was Rebecca. She has access to my room. She knows my passwords. My father hit me before I could finish. His palm caught the side of my face hard enough to send me stumbling sideways into the arm of the couch. A burst of white exploded behind my eyes. I tasted blood immediately, where my lips split against my teeth. My mother gasped. Rebecca pushed off the wall at last, stepping forward with her face arranged into something soft and wounded. Don't, my father snarled. Don't you dare try to drag your sister down with you. I pressed my fingers against my mouth and stared at him. Rebecca looked right at me. And then she said, in the gentlest voice I had ever heard from her, I'm sorry, Sienna. I wish it wasn't true. But I saw the records. I had to tell Dad. I couldn't let you keep doing this to us. It was such a perfect lie. Not dramatic, not wild, just calm enough to be believed. That was the moment I understood I was alone. Pack your things, my father said again. You have 50 minutes now. I should end here. I should tell you that was the worst part. But it wasn't. The worst part was what he took from me before I ever made it to the door. I went upstairs in a daze, one hand still pressed to my mouth. My cheek was throbbing. My lip had started to swell. I could hear my father moving around downstairs, hear the low murmur of my mother's crying, hear Rebecca's voice once. Quiet, measured, poison wrapped in silk. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. She had already won the room. She had already built the version of me they wanted to believe in. A thief, a liar, a daughter rotten where they hadn't been looking. I shut my bedroom door and just stood there for a second. staring at everything that still looked normal. The bed with the blue comforter my mother bought on clearance 2 summers before. My desk covered in color-coded folders. The MIT acceptance packet pinned beside my calendar. The framed certificate from the state math competition. My life. Still sitting there, innocent and intact, while downstairs my family was cutting it to pieces. Then survival kicked in. I grabbed my duffel bag from the closet and started packing with shaking hands. Jeans, t-shirts, underwear, socks, my winter coat, 2 hoodies, a pair of sneakers, toiletries. Every movement felt unreal, like I was helping somebody else run from a fire. Then the practical part of my brain took over. Documents. I pulled open my desk drawer and found my birth certificate, social security card, school records, scholarship paperwork, copies of recommendation letters. All of the things an 18-year-old isn't supposed to know matter yet. But I knew. Maybe because some part of me had always understood that love in our house could turn conditional without warning. I stuffed everything into a folder and jammed it into the bag. Then I looked at my laptop sitting on the desk. For one stupid second, I just stared at it. That laptop had been my entire world. Homework, college essays, applications, code projects, emails with admissions counselors. Every careful step I had taken toward a future outside that house. It wasn't just a machine. It was evidence of the life I had built for myself. And according to my father, it was also the weapon used to destroy me. I reached for it anyway. Downstairs, I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking louder than it ever had before. I zipped the duffel, threw the strap over my shoulder, and took one last look around my room. People always imagine that when you leave home for the last time, you know it. You don't. Not really. You think maybe someone will stop this before it becomes final. You think maybe your mother will come upstairs and say she found proof. Maybe your father will calm down. Maybe your sister's conscience will crack. Maybe the nightmare will lose interest in you and move on. So when I looked around that room, I wasn't saying goodbye. I was memorizing it just in case. I came downstairs 45 minutes later. My father was standing exactly where I'd left him, like he'd rooted himself there out of rage. My mother was sitting on the couch now, twisting a tissue between her hands until it tore. Rebecca stood near the dining room archway, watching me descend with the detached expression of someone observing the consequences of weather. I tightened my grip on the duffel strap and kept moving. When I reached the bottom step, my father's eyes went to the laptop in my hand. "Leave it." I stopped. "I need it. I paid for it. It has my schoolwork on it." "It stays here." My voice cracked. "I need it for graduation, for college." That was when he said the sentence that still wakes me up some nights, even now. "You don't have a college anymore." The room went still. I remember staring at him, waiting for the rest of the sentence to rearrange itself into something survivable. It didn't. "I called MIT this morning," he said. "I told them what you did. I told them they were admitting a thief. They rescinded the offer." For a second, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. "No," I whispered. He didn't blink. "No," I said again, louder this time, because the word was all I had. "You didn't." I did. My knees almost buckled. All those years. Every exam. Every club meeting. Every recommendation letter. Every stupid hopeful thing that I had done because I believed work could protect me. Gone before I even knew I was on trial. My father had not only believed the lie. He had moved quickly enough to make sure it became permanent. "Dad," I said, and now tears were finally slipping down my face, hot and humiliating. "Please, please call them back. Tell them there's been a mistake. Let me prove—" "There was no mistake. Please. You stole from me." "I didn't!" His voice thundered through the room. "Enough!" I flinched. And the thing is, the pain of losing MIT wasn't just about school. It was the violent death of the person I had been that morning. The girl with a map. The girl with an exit. The girl who still believed that if she did everything right, life would eventually reward her for it. She died right there in my parents' living room while my older sister watched. I held the laptop tighter to my chest, almost like if I physically refused to let go of it, maybe one piece of my future would stay mine. My father took one step forward. "Leave it." I looked at my mother. This was the moment, I thought. This is where she speaks. This is where she says, "Richard, wait." This is where she tells him he's going too far. This is where she becomes a mother instead of a witness. But she just cried harder and looked at the floor. So I bent down and placed the laptop gently beside the door. I did it gently because some stubborn part of me still loved it. Still loved the life inside it. My father's gaze shifted to my jacket pocket. "Your phone." I froze. "That's on my plan," he said. "You don't keep it." I pulled it out slowly and set it on top of the laptop. He nodded toward the hook by the kitchen. Your keys too, house and car. The car, a used Honda Civic he'd given me for my 17th birthday. I had thought of it as freedom. A gift. Something that meant I was trusted. Apparently, it had only ever been a loan disguised as love. I took the keys from my pocket, the metal cold against my skin, and dropped them beside the phone. Anything else? I asked. I was trying not to cry now, trying not to break in front of Rebecca, trying to keep one single scrap of dignity from the wreckage. My father looked at me with an expression I can still see too clearly, even after 12 years. Not fury anymore, not even disappointment. Conviction. The kind that makes people dangerous because they no longer think they're hurting you. They think they're being righteous. I want you to remember this moment, he said. I want you to remember what happens when you betray your family. I stared at him, face wet, lip bleeding, scholarship gone, future burned down, and thought, no. I want you to remember it. But I didn't say that. Instead, I turned to Rebecca. She still wouldn't fully meet my eyes. I could see the tension around her mouth now, the effort it took to hold her performance together. That tiny crack in her mask nearly destroyed me, because it meant she knew. She knew exactly what she was doing. She knew I was innocent, and she was letting it happen anyway. You did this, I said quietly. My father moved toward me so fast I stepped back on instinct. Get out. Rebecca finally looked at me then, and for the briefest second, beneath the pity she was performing, I saw something else. Relief. That was the truth of it. She wasn't just framing me to save herself. She was relieved it was working. Relieved to watch me fall. Relieved that for once, I was the daughter being destroyed, and she was the one allowed to stay. I picked up my duffel and walked to the front door. I paused once more and looked at my mother. People ask sometimes, years later, what hurt more, my father throwing me out or my sister setting me up. It was neither. It was my mother saying nothing. I looked right at her, begging without words for something. A sentence, a movement, a refusal, anything that might prove I had not been completely abandoned in that room. She couldn't do it. She just covered her mouth and cried. So I opened the door. Cold March air slapped me across the face, sharp and immediate. The sky had darkened into that bruised blue-color evening gets right before night settles in for good. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car passed. The entire world kept moving like my life hadn't just ended. I stepped outside. Then I heard my father behind me one last time. If you come back, I'll call the police. The door shut. A second later, I heard the deadbolt slide into place. That sound stayed with me longer than the slap. The lock. The finality of it. I stood on the porch for maybe 10 seconds, maybe 20. Long enough to realize I was shivering. Long enough to realize I had nowhere to go. Long enough to understand that no one was coming after me. I was 18 years old, 3 months from graduation, homeless, no money, no phone, no car, no family. I started walking because standing still made it too obvious that I had nowhere to stand. At first, I walked fast, almost angrily, like maybe I could outrun the humiliation if I moved hard enough. Then slower once the shock started wearing off and the practical terror set in. Where was I supposed to sleep? How was I supposed to call anyone? What would I tell people at school? Would my father actually press charges? Would colleges hear about it? Would this follow me forever? I checked my duffel twice while walking, making sure the documents were still inside, because suddenly those papers were the only proof I had that I existed beyond that house. My birth certificate, my records, my name. Night came down all at once. I headed for the public library because it was the only place I could think of that might still have warmth, computers, and the faint illusion of safety. It was 6 miles away. I know because I walked every one of them. The first mile, I cried so hard I could barely see the sidewalk. By the second, the tears had stopped because exhaustion was stronger. By the third, my face felt numb. By the fourth, anger began replacing the grief. Not clean anger, not empowering anger. Just this ugly, molten thing spreading under my ribs. Rebecca had stolen from our father. Rebecca had used my laptop. Rebecca had watched me get blamed. And my father had believed her so completely that he didn't just throw me out. He made sure I had no way back. I thought about MIT then, and I had to stop walking for a minute because the pain of that was physically blinding. I bent over on the side of the road, one hand braced on my knee, trying not to vomit. A full scholarship, a future I had earned, destroyed in one phone call made by a man who never even asked if I was telling the truth. When I finally reached the library, it was close to closing. I must have looked awful because the woman at the front desk took one glance at my swollen face, my split lip, the duffel bag cutting into my shoulder, and her expression changed instantly. She didn't ask questions I couldn't answer. She just told me I had 20 minutes before they shut down the computers. 20 minutes. That was all I had to rebuild a life. I sat at a terminal in the back and typed with trembling fingers. Youth shelter near me. Homeless help under 21. Emergency housing student. The results blurred on the screen at first because I hadn't realized I was crying again. I found a shelter across town that accepted people under 21. I copied the address onto the back of an old receipt from my bag because I didn't have a phone to save it on. I printed directions with the last coins I had in my backpack from lunch money. The librarian came over quietly before closing and handed me a packet of crackers and a bottle of water, like she was doing something ordinary. That kindness almost broke me more than the cruelty had. Because when you've just been thrown away by your own family, even the smallest mercy feels enormous. The shelter was another long walk. By the time I got there, my legs felt hollow. The building was worn down, cinder block and fluorescent lights, the kind of place no one dreams of ending up. But the woman at intake didn't look surprised by me. That was somehow comforting and horrifying at the same time. Like there was an entire world full of people who knew exactly what it meant to arrive with one bag and nowhere else to go. She asked questions. Age, school status, any injuries, any substances, any safe relatives. That last one almost made me laugh. I got a cot in a room with 30 other girls and young women. Some were whispering to each other. Some stared at nothing. One was crying into her pillow. Another smelled like alcohol and old smoke. Somebody coughed all night. The mattress was thin, the blanket rough, and the ceiling above me had a yellow water stain spreading like a map of somewhere no one wanted to live. I lay there staring at it, too cold to sleep, too stunned to think clearly. My face still hurt. My chest hurt worse. I kept replaying the day in loops, as if some new angle might suddenly reveal a version where this wasn't happening. My father's voice, Rebecca's false apology, my mother's silence, the deadbolt sliding shut, the words I called MIT this morning. Every time that sentence came back, it cut fresh. I thought about my room, my desk, my laptop by the door. I thought about how, right then, Rebecca was probably sleeping in the same house that had just exiled me. Safe, warm, still a daughter. And somewhere between midnight and morning, lying on that narrow cot with strangers breathing around me, I stopped feeling like a victim. Not because I was okay. Not because I had healed. Because something else took root inside me. Something hard. Something that whispered through all the wreckage. Survive this. Then make them regret ever touching your life. I didn't know how yet. Didn't know where I would live, or how I would graduate, or what would happen to the future I had spent 4 years building. But for the first time since my father threw me out, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was not going to disappear for them. I was not going to become the failure Rebecca needed me to be. And if rage was the only thing I had left, then rage would have to keep me alive. The next morning, I woke up before the lights came on. Not because I had slept, because my body refused to relax long enough to let sleep happen. The room smelled like stale air and detergent that never quite covered what came before it. Around me, people were still half asleep, curled into themselves, clinging to whatever pieces of comfort they could find on narrow cots and thin blankets. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back at once. The house, the accusation, Rebecca, my father's voice, MIT. I sat up slowly, my muscles stiff, my face still aching from the night before. When I touched my lip, it had crusted over. The swelling had gone down just enough that I could speak without it splitting open again. I was still here. That meant I had survived the first night. Now I had to survive everything after it. The shelter gave breakfast, if you could call it that. Toast, powdered eggs, weak coffee. I ate it anyway, because I didn't know when the next meal would be. That realization hit harder than anything else so far. Hunger wasn't theoretical anymore. It was immediate, practical, something I had to think about between every decision. After eating, I went straight back to the public library. Same computer, same trembling hands. But this time I wasn't searching randomly. This time I had a plan. First priority, finish high school. I was 3 months away. I could not let Rebecca take that from me too. I emailed my school counselor from a temporary account I created on the spot. Explained everything in blunt, stripped-down sentences because I didn't have the emotional energy to dress it up. Homeless, no phone, no access to my belongings, need help finishing school. Then I waited. Those 10 minutes felt longer than the 6-mile walk the night before. When the reply came, it changed everything. Come in today. We'll figure this out. Her name was Mrs. Alvarez. I will remember her for the rest of my life. because she was the first adult who looked at me after everything happened and didn't see a thief. She saw a kid who had been thrown away. She didn't ask me if my father was telling the truth. She didn't treat me like a problem. She just asked, "What do you need to graduate?" And for the first time in 24 hours, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. Through her, I got into a transitional housing program for homeless youth. It wasn't much. A small room, shared bathroom, strict rules. But it was safe. It was mine. She helped me apply for emergency financial aid. Helped me get access to a donated laptop through a program for disadvantaged students. Old, slow, missing keys. Perfect. Because it was mine, and nobody could take it from me. I finished high school, June 2013. I walked across that stage alone. No one in the audience. No cheering. No proud father shaking hands with teachers. No mother crying happy tears. Just me, and my name being called into a silence that swallowed it whole. I remember holding the diploma and thinking, they tried to take even this. But they didn't, and that mattered. After graduation, everything got harder, because there was no next step waiting for me. No college, no scholarship, no safety net, just a room with thin walls and a future I had to build from scratch. That's when the anger changed. It stopped being something that hurt me and became something I used. I worked 2 jobs, warehouse during the day, restaurant at night, 80-hour weeks, every week. I saved everything. No takeout, no clothes, no distractions. Just work, eat, sleep, repeat. And at night, after my shifts, after my feet were numb and my hands ached, I taught myself how to code. YouTube tutorials, free courses, forums, anything I could get my hands on. I built projects no one asked for, solved problems no one was paying me to solve, learned because I had no other option. There were nights I almost quit, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, quietly. Sitting on the edge of that narrow bed, staring at the cracked wall, wondering if this was it. If this was as far as I would ever get. A girl who used to be on her way to MIT, reduced to surviving. But every time that thought came, something else followed it. My father's voice. You stole from me. You're a disgrace. You have no future. And then Rebecca's face. That soft fake apology. That tiny flicker of relief in her eyes. And just like that, I couldn't quit. Because quitting would mean they were right. And I refused to give them that. 18 months later, I had saved $24,000. I moved out of transitional housing. Got a studio apartment, $600 a month. It felt like a palace, not because it was nice, because it was mine. I kept working, kept learning, kept applying. 40 job applications, 40 rejections. Each one felt like confirmation of what my father believed. Then the 41st, yes. Junior developer, $45,000 a year. It wasn't MIT. It wasn't the future I had planned, but it was a door, and I walked through it. From there, everything moved fast. Because I made sure it did. I stayed late, took extra work, learned everything, made myself impossible to ignore. 1 year, promotion, $65,000, then $85,000, then $110,000. By 24, I was making $150,000. By 26, $200,000. At 27, I left. Started my own company. No investors, no backup plan, just skill, discipline, and something still burning inside me that refused to let me fail. First year, $500,000. Second, $2 million. Third, $5 million. Now, I'm 30. My company does $12 million a year. 40 employees. 3 offices. Clients across the country. Net worth around $8 million. House paid off. Cars paid off. Everything mine. Built from nothing. From a duffel bag. From a shelter. From a night where I stared at a water stain and decided I wouldn't disappear. And for 12 years, I never contacted them. Not once. No calls. No letters. No showing up. Nothing. I wanted them to believe I failed. I wanted them to think I disappeared. That they were right. Because when the truth finally reached them, I didn't want it to hurt. I wanted it to destroy them. 2 months ago, I hired a private investigator. I wanted to know everything. Not guesses. Not assumptions. Facts. What I found was almost worse than I expected. My father's construction business never recovered. Losing $47,000 hit harder than he admitted. He downsized, sold equipment, laid off workers. He's 66 now, still working, can't afford to retire. My mother works part-time at a grocery store, has been for years, helping cover bills, keeping things afloat, still in the same house, still living with the consequences of that one decision. And Rebecca lost the money, all of it. She had moved it into cryptocurrency back in 2013, thought she was being smart. Thought she was getting ahead. The exchange got hacked. Money gone. Just like that, $47,000. Vanished.
Damn.
She stayed at home until 28. Finally moved out. Married her boyfriend. Had 2 kids. Now works a low-level job. Barely making enough. Living paycheck to paycheck. And my father still helps her. Still bails her out. Still choosing her. Even after everything. The investigator found proof. Everything I needed. Bank trails. Accounts. Records. Connections. All of it pointing to Rebecca. Not me. Never me. I spent 2 weeks writing the letter. 30 drafts. Every word mattered. Every sentence needed to land exactly where it would hurt the most. Not revenge. Not really. Something colder. Something final. Truth. Delivered all at once. I mailed it certified. Signature required. Timed perfectly. To arrive. The day before Thanksgiving. November 23rd, 2025. 2:03 p.m. My father signed for the letter. I know that because I had someone watching. Not because I needed to see his face, but because after 12 years of silence, I wanted to know exactly when the truth entered that house. When it crossed the threshold. When it became unavoidable. Thanksgiving Day, 5 p.m. The whole family was there. My parents, Rebecca, her husband Daniel, their 2 kids, my aunt and uncle. Turkey on the table, plates set, everything arranged to look like a normal family, like nothing had ever been broken. My father stood up to say grace. That's when he mentioned it. The letter. From me. 12 years. No contact. And suddenly, something in his hands. Something none of them could ignore. The room went quiet. My mother started crying immediately. Rebecca, I'm told, went still. Too still. My father said he wanted to read it out loud. Said the whole family deserved to hear it. Rebecca tried to stop him. Told him maybe he should read it privately first. That alone tells you everything. But my father waved her off. No, he said. If she sent it, we all hear it. So he opened it. And he started reading. Dear Dad, it's been 12 years since you threw me out. Since you called me a thief. Since you told me I was dead to you. The first paragraph landed like a shockwave. Not loud. Just heavy. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. Second paragraph. When you threw me out, I had nothing. No money, no phone, no car, no family. I spent my first night in a homeless shelter. That's when my mother broke. Started crying harder. Because now it wasn't a story anymore. It was real. It had happened. And she had watched it happen. Third paragraph. My father's voice started shaking. Because this is where I told him who I became. I built a life from nothing. I started with 2 jobs. I taught myself skills. I built a company. Today, I own a business doing $12 million a year. I have 40 employees. I am worth more than you ever imagined I could be. He had spent 12 years believing I was gone. Gone meant failure. Gone meant erased. But I wasn't. I had become something he couldn't understand. And he was hearing it for the first time. In front of everyone. Fourth paragraph. The truth. I didn't steal that $47,000. And right there, Rebecca stood up. Tried to leave. My uncle grabbed her arm. Sit down. My father kept reading. Even as his hands started to shake. Even as his voice cracked. Rebecca did. That was the moment everything broke. Not cracked. Not shifted. Shattered. She used my laptop. She watched my passwords. She moved the money. She lost it. And she let you throw me out instead of telling the truth. I attached proof. Real proof. Bank records. Transaction trails. Cryptocurrency accounts. Emails. Everything. Every piece of evidence my father never asked to see 12 years ago. Now sitting in his hands. Now impossible to deny. By the time he reached the evidence, he stopped reading. Not because he chose to. Because his body gave out. The letter slipped from his hands. And my father, the man who told me I was dead to him, collapsed. Dropped to his knees. Right there beside the Thanksgiving table. He started sobbing. Not quiet. Not controlled. Broken. Gasping. Like he couldn't get air into his lungs. Like the truth had knocked something loose inside him and it wouldn't go back. My mother was screaming. Actually screaming. At Rebecca. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you didn't do this. Rebecca said nothing. Not a single word. Because there was nothing left to say. My aunt picked up the letter. Finished reading it out loud. Her voice shaking. But steady enough to carry every word to the end. You threw out the wrong daughter. You destroyed the one who would have taken care of you. And you kept the one who stole from you. By the last lines, everyone in the room was crying. Except Rebecca. She just sat there. Still. Silent. Watching 12 years of lies collapse around her. When the letter ended, my aunt looked at her. Is it true? No answer. Rebecca stood up. Walked out. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't deny it. Didn't even try. She just left. And that was her confession. The dinner was over. Not because anyone said it, because there was nothing left to hold it together. My father was still on the floor, repeating the same words over and over. What did I do? What did I do? My mother started throwing things. Plates, glasses, food. Like breaking the room might somehow undo what had just happened. It didn't. Nothing could. They took my father to the hospital that night. Panic attack. He thought he was having a heart attack. Couldn't breathe. Spent 3 hours in the ER. They stabilized him. Sent him home. Sent him back to the house where the truth was waiting for him in every corner. Rebecca disappeared for 4 days. No calls. No messages. Her husband, Daniel, called her over and over. Nothing. When she finally came back, he confronted her. And this time, she confessed. Everything. The theft. The lie. Framing me. Letting it happen. All of it. Daniel left her. Took the kids. Filed for divorce the next week. Cited fraud. Deception. 12 years of it. My parents changed the locks. Told her not to come back. Cut her off completely. In 1 week, she lost everything. Husband. Children. Parents. Home. The same way I had. At 18. My father tried to call me 47 times. 2 days. I never answered. He sent letters. Registered mail. I returned them unopened. He showed up at my office. Security turned him away. I filed a no-contact order. My mother managed to get one message through my company website. Just one. Please forgive us. Please come home. We made a mistake. A mistake. That's what she called it. 12 years of my life, reduced to a word small enough to carry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I'm not punishing them. I'm just done. I lived 12 years without them. I built everything without them. I learned who I was without them. The only difference now is that they know. They know the truth. They know who I became. They know what they threw away. And that knowledge, that's something they have to live with, the same way I lived with what they did. I don't need their apology. I don't need their presence. I don't need their guilt. I needed the truth to exist, where the lie used to be. And now it does. My name is Sienna Carter. I was 18 when my family destroyed my life. I'm 30 now, and I built one anyway. Not because of them, not for them, in spite of them.